I just want to quickly return to the question of, turnout before we get into who voted and why we've seen these very high-profile figures voting in this election. Not to say that they didn't in the previous one, but certainly given the circumstances under which we went to this poll, it is significant. And there's a lot of opinion coming in terms of how to understand this voter turnout. We must remind our viewers that even Wafula Chebukati said that this 48% was an estimate. There weren't final figures to him. They don't have final figures yet. We hope in the next press briefing that we would get more accurate figures and understand how they arrived at this 48%. But I'm just going to read to you some of what I am seeing coming in terms of the understanding of 48%. One of our viewers argues that the argument is a fallacy. You cannot say 48% of 100%, meaning, the 19.6. Rather, it is 48% of the 79% who voted on August 8th, which was the turnout. And they're using that to calculate the fact that, then in that case, Raila would be commanding 31%. He was only able to keep 31% away from the polls. Your thoughts on that?
I don't understand that argument at all. I think we can only calculate a percentage for this election, a turnout from the number of registered voters, and whatever we calculate,
19 million,
yes,
as 100%.
Yes, whatever we do on that has absolutely nothing to do with the turnout of the August 8th election. Absolutely nothing. I don't understand his argument.
Okay.
Actually, it's very
I agree with my chair here.
Yeah.
This is a fresh election. So the turnout is for this election, no reference to the last election. So when Chebukati is talking to Kenyans, he's talking about this election, and therefore the numbers must be reflected on this election, and the percentage turnout must be reflected with what has come up today against the whole of the registered voters. And in any event, if you're going to talk about numbers and turnout and returns, he can't hold it against the last election. That would be absurd. It's going to be coming against the fresh election, which is what is coming up today.
And I wonder if I'm making sense of it even as I repeat it back to you. You're saying that in the first election on August 8th, all protagonists, let's say all, managed to get out 77% of the vote. And in this one, you can make the same assumption that all protagonists only managed to bring out 48% of the vote. So for the one who pulled out, is their influence then not the difference?
You see, when we were talking of the turnout as being 77%, we didn't say it's 77% of those who turned up, 77% of those who were registered. So even today, when we're talking of the voter turnout, we have to talk of the voter turnout against the whole register. And whether it means that Raila is strong or weak is not the issue. The voter turnout is 48%. Whether it is the boycott that has caused it, voter apathy, we said there are various reasons why people are not voting. There are those who are not voting because Uhuru is winning anyway. So why should I add my one vote to it?
Right.
There are those who are not turning up because they're so tired of the chaos and the terrible things that have been going on. There are those who are not going because Baba said so. So all those are factors. But then when we're counting voter turnout, we have to do it against the entire roll. Even the 77% that was tallied in August was against the entire roll.
Okay, let me let that rest for now, and of course we'll hope to hear more on those figures from the IBC chair in subsequent press briefings. But we had just shown you a report where various notable leaders turned out to vote. Prof, I want to start from the Chief Justice showing up to vote, and because the reality is that up until today, well, even today, there's been debate as to the legality of this vote, even though the Constitution requires us to go back to that presidential election. People, quoting various things, be it the political environment or IBC not meeting a certain minimums, etc. Either way, whether this vote should have been on today has been brought into question by virtue of the fact that the Chief Justice showed up to vote. Is that in itself a statement of some kind?
Yes, it is a statement, but not the one probably people are expecting me, our viewers are expecting me to put. It's a very unique statement. If you have witnessed the last 2 months, the judiciary, which the Chief Justice heads, has been under attack. and it has been attacked by the political class. And so there is always a breaking point. You realize that even yesterday, through some frivolous reasons, some judges did not just turn up for some cases. I could see that as pressure. So what the Chief Justice did today, he did not want anybody to read anything from him. If he did not turn up to vote, probably some section of the political class would interpret he agrees with the call by NASA not to have people not vote, so he would quickly be dubbed a NASA operative. So, but if he now turns up to vote, again, probably NASA now says he probably is heeding the Jubilee call. But where he escapes the wrath of either NASA and the Jubilee is that he could have turned up and actually voted for Raila Odinga, or he voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. So we don't know who he voted for. He could also have voted for Dida or our court. That act alone obscures any interpretation that would come his way, either saying he's biased for one side or not. I think he did it with a lot of pain. Probably under different circumstances, he would just probably keep off the vote. But under the current circumstances, the Chief Justice, I think, was wise enough not to allow people to speculate about what he thinks, and he has walked out with excellent grades. Nobody will ever know who he voted for. He exercised his right, it is in the Constitution, but he does not want to lead people to think he belongs to this or that much. There was no requirement that he cannot vote. This was a time for voting and people had to make choices. He made a choice to vote, which is a constitutional choice, but whether or not he did for a candidate that would be, anybody can claim him now. You see among the 8 candidates, so you don't know who he voted for. So in the process has reduced pressure from him. And I think he's doing that because he's expecting one or two cases coming over, or probably on Monday. Maybe there will be a petition on Monday. Imagine if he had a petition before him, questioning the victory of one of the candidates, and then he also kept off. It will be used in court against him. We say, you know, first of all, you didn't vote. So he has done very well, and he has protected the judiciary.
Macharia.
I think I agree with you. The Chief Justice, I think, did the best thing he could do.
Yes.
He did the best thing he could do. As long as there was an election which has not been declared illegitimate by the courts, which is a legitimate election being done in accordance with the law, then he had every right to vote. If he did not, it would send a signal which would suggest something. The fact that he did also sends a signal, but it was the lesser of what you might call the two evils. And I think he really had no choice, because if he had stayed away, that would have been taken as an even stronger statement than him voting. It is true that this thing will come up, because there will be some petitions pending. There are the ones which were not heard because the judges who absented themselves. There may be fresh ones filed, and he will have to sit on them as the Chief Justice. But I don't think anybody will go and say that you voted, therefore you cannot sit on this one.
What do you think about the former presidents turning up to vote?
I think that's patriotism and nationalism, and I think it's just to tell Kenyans we are still Kenyan. We really, at this point as Kenya, need a rallying call. We need kind of unity. We need to know that we are together. I think it's very, very crucial that our past presidents participated in this process. What they did, we do not know. We cannot ascribe a vote to them. But I think it's very, very good, because let's talk about it. Kenya now is a divided house, and we need people to rally us together. We need people to unify us. And for the two to come out as senior statesmen and vote is kind of saying, Kenyans, let's move forward. Let's find nationhood in all this. And I think it was a good thing.
And I think, Anne, in that connection, the former, you see, legally speaking, the right thing was for people to vote. So anybody who says, let us not vote, really, it's not covered. People can make their own choices, but you cannot tell people not to vote. The obvious thing is that everybody under the Constitution had a right to vote. So the former presidents were showing respect for the rule of law, and were also showing respect for the Constitution. And they were also saying they have their own personal individual rights covered by the Constitution, which they were protecting. So they did not want to show they belong to any side, but they were saying that once it is legally declared that I can vote, they wanted to exercise their right to vote without anybody preventing them from doing that. So it's a good thing also that because it's not because anybody told them to go and vote. The Constitution allows them to vote. So that is the right thing to do, and it sends the correct messages, but it doesn't begin to cure the political crisis in this country.
Right.
Yes.
But NASA believes they found one way to cure this crisis. They've transformed into the National Resistance Movement. What do you think of that, Macharia?
It's a very interesting one. I actually suspected they would do something of the sort because it is important for them, first of all, to remain relevant. I think even before Raila declared that they're withdrawing from the elections, I had written a piece looking at what are their options. And one thing I said is that they will then have to come up, they will have to accept the reality that Uhuru is going to win this election and he's going to be sworn in. And after that, now they'll have to deal with him as the president and not as just a candidate. And I had said that they will have then to come up very strongly to continue the fight for social and political and constitutional change and social justice. But what I was wondering is, will they have the resolve and the determination to go all the way? They have now said they have transformed themselves into a resistance movement. So what? Is it a change of name? Is it a matter of branding? Or is it a change of tactics? The fact is that once they accept the reality that Uhuru is now the president,
then so what?
They then have to say, how do we keep up the fight? They want to show that we are not surrendering, we are not stepping down, we are not saying let us wait for 2022. We are going to keep up that momentum in fighting for change, and actually declared that theirs will be to force the calling of a new election in 90 days. But there was nothing to panic about them calling themselves a resistance movement, because they did not. They declared that in the middle of the city. If they had declared that from the bush somewhere and then gone underground, it would be a different matter.
Okay.
They remain above board. They said theirs will be a campaign of civil disobedience and economic boycotts for targeted companies which they think serve the regime. They did not say they are taking up arms. They did not say they are going underground. So there is really nothing to panic about. I had Murkomen calling them a rebel movement on TV today, but that's the kind of thing you can expect from Murkomen. The thing is, they're not a rebel movement. They are just like any other political movement. Whether they want to rebrand or to change their name, to re-register afresh as a political party rather than just a loose coalition, that's their prerogative. The thing is, will they have the resolve and the determination to keep it up?
Prof, is it strategic or is it just rebranding? Well, that would be strategy as well. But I mean, does it really signify a change in tack, I suppose? I
think it does. And the wording of the new outfit is scaring enough. If you are in the power, you can start associating with them with something really sharp, a sharp knife being shown to you. But when they explain it, it doesn't look dangerous. I think what they are trying to do is a strategy, rebrand, then have a strategy that scares your opponent, but actually you are not as dangerous as the opponent thinks. I think what they want to pick on, in my opinion, immediately after that, I had also some worries. But after they explained what they are about to do, economic, boycott and civil disobedience, I think you can almost suddenly see that the NASA team is informed by the philosophy of Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi. You know, Mahatma Gandhi organized similar things, what you call civil disobedience, where, of course, it went to extreme where they would still succumb themselves to police for beatings, the colonial police. And some of them even lay on the railway line just to see whether the conscience of the other driver, the train driver, can allow him to crush them on the railway line. Similarly, in the early 60s, Martin Luther King Jr. Organized restaurant sit-ins. So, Anne, you would go into a restaurant in the United States of America and you find that there are people standing within the restaurant or just standing on the seats there, so you can't sit. Even in cinema, you go there and people are standing on the seats you should be sitting on, and they are also on the podium. And they make it difficult for the exercise to go on. So I expect that this kind of disobedience, they are expecting that they will appeal to the conscience of Jubilee. Can they continue punishing and arm the people who have certain grievances to do? And that's when Martin Luther King gave the speech. He has a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, children of former slaves and former slaveholders will sit together on the table of friendship. Several years later, it has been possible for the black people to sit together and talk. So I think it is probably a strategy change which wants to appeal to the conscience of the Jubilee government, but also the conscience of their supporters, that we can do this without hurting anybody. The danger with this is that sometimes people start like this with what they call civil disobedience, but the movement can still be hijacked by a different voice. And when it is hijacked from the different voice, it has the capacity to go the NRM movement under Museveni in the late 80s, and then it establishes a military wing which you call NRA, the National Resistance Army. Similarly, in South Sudan, we have seen such a kind of case. Usually it begins like that. So we hope that the NASA group will keep with the civil disobedience, which is enshrined in the Constitution, and not allow anybody to hijack it so that it directs the nation towards what? Violence. That's the only danger we can guard against. But for now, they have said they will follow the law within the Constitution, and I think that is perfectly okay with me.
All right. Rosalind, can a national resistance movement work in Kenya? I mean, yes, on the one hand, it is about certain reform they're talking about, but ultimately it is equally about capturing state power. Can a resistance movement and boycotts of this form give the ultimate goal?
I think the way it has been structured and the way they have talked about it, it is more of a people kind of movement, a movement by the people to ascend to the space they want. And I think what Kenyans are trying to get is what they've fought for over the years, from the 60s to now. In fact, from colonial times to now. They're fighting for true democracy, true space, and true everything. And what I'm looking at is a space where we need to dialogue as Kenyans. We need to talk to each other. We need to understand if we lose, we all lose. If we win, we all win. If we destroy, we all destroy. And I think what what NASA is trying to do is they've reached a point where we probably are not making it now, but we're not giving up. And not for us, but for Kenyans. And because Kenyans must all win. And I think we need to move to the space where we respect one another, we like one another, we talk to each other, and we create a space where we can have a Kenya for all of us. And I think that's what this so-called movement is trying to achieve. And it's for the good of us. And for all of us, let's have the election today. It's been done. Yeah. But we got to move to a Kenya where we can dialogue and move to a space where we do not destroy, but we all win. I think that's what we're looking at.
And one positive about what they said, which can be picked, is I heard one of the leaders, I think it was the Honorable Raila Odinga, when he said that nobody should do any ethnic profiling. I thought that was good and timely, because when you establish a movement which is based on ethnic sentimentalism, you alienate a lot of people away from you. So that was positive, and it means that whatever they want to say embraces the whole republic in a constitutional way. So we have to wait and see how they will operate. But for now, I don't think there is any danger that we can pose. We hope that they will do it within the law, because for me, Anna, I would be scared if anybody does not follow this constitution. I wrote almost 180 articles in 2007, 2008, you know, just explaining why this constitutional dispensation is good. So I would not like us to reach a point where this constitutional order is either interfered with or is suspended. So I hope they keep within the law, and they have a right to raise issues. And what my sister is saying is correct, that when now we finish this election, we need a new conversation, a discussion about how this country can go. Even if we need a referendum, let us have a referendum. If we don't need it, let us sort out these problems. But for anybody to pretend there is no problem in Kenya, there is no issue to sort out, that's when we shall have a problem. But if we recognize we have a problem on both sides and sit down, I don't think there is anything that is unsurmountable. We can overcome this.
Macharia, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah. If NASA is focused, determined, and resolved, and very clear on what they want to achieve, well and good. But they do have to be very disciplined to start with. It is easy to organize mass protests, what we call mass action, which you intend to be peaceful, but which in Kenya, in our situation, invariably get hijacked by stone throwers. Yeah. There are people who believe that you cannot make an impact with mass action unless you throw stones, break windows, and loot. Some think they're doing it for political purposes. Yeah. There are others, opportunists, who take advantage. Anytime there is something of the sort, there will be opportunists who will come in to throw stones and to loot and to rob. There will also be people from the other side who will want to disrupt what might be a peaceful march, so that they can also do their own share of looting and robbing and stealing. There will be then a so-called Nairobi business community who will come in with their thuggish ways, because they think they want to preserve some of the city as their ethnic enclave. So fine, let us see what they will do next, but they do have to be very conscious that they must be in charge of their crowds, their supporters, and so on and so forth. Secondly, they have another challenge, which is sticking together. One of the biggest problems with Kenyan politics is that once an incumbent is in power, everybody else tends to disperse. People get bought off, people are looking for jobs. You suddenly find people who you thought were the most resolute in the opposition suddenly looking for jobs as ambassadors or parastatal chiefs or something. So they do have to be able to hold on to the base. If they don't, they will just dissipate.
All right, and I want to thank my guests, Macharia Gaitha, Rosalyn Odete, and Edward Kisiangani, as an analyst from the show Opinion Coast. We're just going to bring you up to speed with some news. Earlier, we'd reported to you 4 deaths that took place in Nyanza 2 in Nairobi. The Inspector General of Police's office is now making their own statement on the same, with their position